The sun had barely lifted when I first saw her lying half in the river, half on the sand, like the current had tried to carry her away but failed. The chill of morning clung to her skin, and when I touched her arm, it felt cold enough to frighten me. She was tall, taller than most men I knew, and her limbs were strong, carved like she'd spent her life running, climbing, fighting. But her face? Her face was soft, young, almost peaceful, despite the blood matted in her dark hair. I knelt beside her, afraid she might be dead already. When her eyes snapped open, I froze. They were the color of storm clouds, dark, alert, full of fear and a spark of defiance she couldn't hide. Her breath came shallow, fast, and she tried to push herself away, but her body gave out. "Easy now," I whispered, raising my hands to show I meant no harm. She didn't understand my words, but she understood tone. She blinked slowly, warily, before slipping back into unconsciousness. The river whispered behind us, the desert wind carrying the scent of danger like a warning I was too stubborn to notice. I should have walked away. Any man with sense would have. Apache territory was unpredictable, and taking a wounded girl, especially one built like a warrior, was inviting trouble. But something in me refused to leave her. Maybe it was the loneliness of too many quiet nights, or the ghosts of old battles I was trying to outrun. Maybe it was simply the way she looked, young, wounded, abandoned. I slid my arms beneath her and lifted her from the sand, surprised by her weight and strength. Even half-conscious as she was, the trail back to my cabin was long. And she stirred only once, mumbling something in Apache. I carried her carefully, listening to her breaths, counting each one like proof she was still alive. My cabin sat tucked between cottonwoods and sandstone, sheltered from the worst of the desert storms. When I pushed the door open with my shoulder, she groaned, as if waking from a nightmare. I laid her on the bed I'd barely used myself, then knelt beside her, unsure where to begin. Her wound was deep, a slash across her ribs clean but angry. Likely made by a blade, I heated water, grinding old herbs the way an Apache woman once taught me long ago, when I'd been young and foolish enough to cross their land alone. Memories of that night, flickered shadows, smoke, a woman's voice singing a healing chant. I pushed the thought away and focused on the girl before me. When I cleaned her wounds, she winced but didn't cry out. She clenched her jaw, eyes squeezing shut, fingers gripping the blanket. I murmured soothing words, though I doubted she understood. When she finally relaxed, sweat beaded her forehead, and she whispered one word, "Naya." Her voice was soft, almost musical, and hearing her name felt like being trusted with something sacred. I repeated it quietly, making sure I pronounced it right. Her eyes fluttered open, studying me, searching my face for something, danger, kindness, maybe both. I saw terror buried deep beneath her bravery. Alone, wounded, far from her people, she had every reason to fear me. I pointed to myself and said, "Sam." She didn't repeat it, didn't smile. But her gaze softened just slightly, enough to tell me she had heard me. Understood at least a little. As the sun climbed high outside, her fever rose with it. She tossed in the bed, mumbling Apache words I couldn't grasp, her breath catching in her throat. I placed a cool cloth on her forehead, holding her steady as tremors shook her body. She was strong, too strong to give in easily, but fever makes no promises. By late afternoon, she grew still, her breathing shallow but steady. I watched over her like a man guarding something precious, something he didn't deserve but couldn't walk away from. Outside, the desert grew quiet, eerily so, as if watching us. When evening shadows stretched long across the cabin walls, she woke again. This time, her eyes didn't look frightened, they looked aware. She studied the room, then me, her gaze lingering on the herbs, the bandages, the water bowl. She reached slowly for her side, feeling the wrapped wound, then looked back at me with confusion and a hint of disbelief. I expected her to recoil, to retreat behind the distrust her people often held toward mine. Instead, she said her name again, more firmly this time, "Naya." I nodded. "Sam?" She gave the smallest, faintest nod. She tried to sit but gasped as pain shot through her. I helped her gently back down, and though she didn't like being touched, she didn't fight me. That alone told me she was in worse shape than she wanted to admit. I offered her water in a wooden cup. She hesitated, watching me as if searching for poison, deceit, weakness, anything. After a long moment, she accepted it, sipping slowly. Her hands trembled, and when a drop spilled, she flinched like she expected punishment. My chest tightened. Whoever wounded her had not just cut flesh, they had carved fear into her bones. Later. When the fire crackled low, she watched me from the bed, eyes heavy but alert. I could feel questions in her stare why I helped her, who I was, whether I planned to harm her. I didn't have answers even for myself. The desert night grew colder, wind whistling through the gaps in the cabin walls. I draped a blanket over her and she whispered something I didn't understand, but the tone was soft, almost grateful. I sat by the fire pretending to rest, though sleep wouldn't come. Every crack of the wood, every whisper of wind told me danger wasn't far. By midnight, she slept peacefully for the first time, her breathing slow and steady. I watched her silhouette against the dim orange glow and wondered what story lay behind her wound. Had she escaped something? Someone? Had a battle gone wrong? Had she been left to die the way I found her? I didn't know, but I could feel the truth pressing in from the darkness outside my cabin. She didn't belong here, and someone out there knew she was missing. Someone who would come looking? And I wasn't sure if they'd see me as her rescuer or her captor. As the night deepened, I stepped outside, letting the cold air settle my thoughts. The river whispered behind the trees, moonlight turning it silver. Coyotes howled in the distance. I scanned the shadows, unease creeping into my bones. Saving her felt right. But right choices in the desert carry consequences. I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled slowly. If her people found her with me, they might not ask questions before arrows flew. Still, when I turned back toward the cabin, I knew one thing with certainty: I'd do it all again. Because leaving her there would have haunted me forever. When I closed the door softly behind me. Naya stirred, her gaze meeting mine through half-opened eyes. She didn't speak, didn't move, but something in her expression shifted trust, or the beginning of it. I sat beside her again, listening to the wind outside. I had no idea what storms tomorrow would bring, but as she drifted back to sleep, I felt something solid settle in my chest. A choice had been made. A path opened. And even a blind man could see it would lead to trouble, danger, maybe even blood. But fate had placed Naya in my arms. And I wasn't letting her die. The moment I stepped onto the porch, the rising sun glinted off spear tips and rifle barrels. 20 Apache warriors formed a ring around my cabin, their horses shifting restlessly beneath them. The air was thick with dust and threat, the kind that made every instinct in a man tighten. My palms went cold, but I forced myself not to reach for my gun. One wrong move, one twitch, and the ground would drink my blood before I could blink. Their chief rode forward, tall and commanding, his long braids swaying like night-black ropes against the morning light. He dismounted without breaking eye contact, his boots touching the earth with a gravity that silenced even the wind. His face was stern, marked with age. Wisdom and grief carved into deep lines. He raised a hand, and the warriors behind him shifted, lowering their weapons just slightly, but enough to show restraint instead of slaughter. My pulse hammered as he studied me, as if weighing my soul and finding every flaw I'd ever tried to bury. Then he spoke in English thick with accent, but sharp with authority. "You sheltered our daughter." My breath caught like a rope tightening around my neck. There was no mistaking his words. Daughter, not warrior. Not scout. Not runaway, daughter. My gaze flicked back toward the cabin where Naya slept, unaware that an entire tribe had come for her. Everything inside me twisted. I found her wounded, I managed. She would have died out there. He nodded once, as if acknowledging the truth but not absolving the consequences. You acted with honor, he said. But honor does not erase danger. You hold blood of the chief's family under your roof. His hand brushed the hilt of the long knife at his belt. Now you must answer to us. Behind him, the warriors tightened their formation again. Their horses pawed at the ground, dust rising in golden clouds. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to judge. A knot formed in my throat as I lifted my hand slightly, showing I held no weapon. "If you want to see her," I said quietly, "she's inside." A murmur ran through the circle, some of the men shifting forward with suspicion. The chief stepped closer to me, close enough for me to smell the sage and smoke on his clothes. "We will see her. But if you harmed her?" His voice darkened. "Your spirit will not see another sunrise." The threat wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. It settled over me like a shadow meant to stay until death. I swallowed hard and stepped aside, motioning toward the cabin door. The chief signaled 2 warriors to enter with him. The rest remained outside, watching me with eyes like sharpened obsidian. I stood still as stone while the chief ducked into my cabin. The seconds stretched like hours. Inside, I heard Naya stir at the sudden intrusion, heard a soft, pained cry as she attempted to rise. The chief's voice rumbled softly in Apache, tone shifting from authority to something gentler. A moment later, silence fell, heavy and absolute. The kind that makes a man wonder if his fate is already sealed behind a closed door. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Then the door opened. The chief stepped out, his expression unreadable. For a breath, he just stared at me. Then he spoke low but clear. "She says you saved her life. She says you fought no one, touched her not, gave her food and warmth." His eyes softened just slightly. "For this you have our respect." A slow exhale left my chest, my knees nearly buckling in relief, but the chief wasn't finished. He raised a hand. "Yet danger remains." I stiffened. "Her wound was not from accident," he continued. "Men hunted her. Men from the mining company near the ridge. They shot at our people. They want our land." His gaze hardened like iron. "They saw her flee. They may come here next." The realization hit like a blow to the ribs. If those men tracked her to me, they wouldn't care who she was. They'd come armed, vicious, and desperate. And they wouldn't hesitate to kill a lone rancher who got in their way. Or an entire Apache party. The chief stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You saved my daughter. Now we repay honor with honor." He extended his arm, palm open. A gesture of alliance? A gesture rarely offered? Slowly, unsure if my hand was steady enough, I grasped his forearm. His grip was strong, unshakable. "We will stand with you," he said. "But you must stand with us. If the white men come, they will find warriors waiting." A chill ran through me, not fear, but something deeper. Something like fate linking 2 lives, 2 worlds. I nodded. "I'll stand with you." His warriors formed tighter ranks, preparing defenses around the clearing. Some dismounted to search for tracks, confirming whether the mining company gunmen were already close. Others took positions among the rocks and cottonwoods, silent as shadows. I hurried inside to check on Naya. She lay awake, breathing hard, eyes blazing with emotion at hearing her father's voice outside. When she saw me, she reached for my hand weakly, but with intention, gratitude, trust, maybe even hope. I squeezed her fingers gently. "Your people are here," I whispered. Her gaze shimmered, but danger approached faster than words could comfort. It started as a faint rumble in the distance, then 2, then 3 thuds, horses at full gallop. The Apache scouts returned swiftly. "Riders coming," one shouted. 6 men, rifles ready." The chief moved like a storm given form. "Positions," he barked. The warriors vanished into the trees and rocks as if the desert itself swallowed them. I stepped outside with my rifle, adrenaline burning in my veins. The chief shot me a sharp glance. "You do not hide," he said. "You stand beside us." I nodded once, settling into position. The hooves grew louder, angry, reckless. Soon the riders burst over the ridge, dust swallowing their shapes. They spotted the cabin and slowed, fanning out with practiced aggression. "Morgan!" the leader shouted. "We saw you pick up that Apache girl. Hand her over." My grip tightened on my rifle. The chief stood tall beside me, spear in hand, unyielding. "She is daughter of our blood," he said coldly. "You will not touch her again." The gunmen laughed, raising their rifles. "We weren't asking permission." That's when the desert exploded. Asterisk arrows sliced through the air like silent lightning. 2 riders fell instantly, tumbling from saddles with cries cut short. Gunshots followed, ringing sharp against the canyon walls. I fired once, twice, dropping a man who tried to flank the cabin. The remaining riders panicked, pulling back, but Apache warriors were already upon them, fast, precise, relentless. Within moments, the fight was over. The surviving riders fled into the hills, leaving weapons, pride, and dead behind. The chief lowered his spear slowly, scanning the field. "They will not return," he said. "Cowards rarely do." Asterisk I exhaled, shoulders sinking as the adrenaline faded. The chief turned to me, eyes steady. "You risked your life for my daughter," he said. "For this you are no longer stranger." He placed a hand on my shoulder, heavy, sincere. "From this day you are friend of our people." Behind him, Naya stood in the cabin doorway, leaning weakly against the frame, but smiling for the first time. A small, soft smile that felt like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Asterisk, the chief stepped aside, allowing her to approach. She took a shaky breath, reached out and touched my chest lightly right over my heart. "Sam," she murmured, my name spoken like a promise. I swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. The chief watched her, then me, nodding with approval. "She lives because of you," he said. "And now, your lives are bound." His words settled like destiny written on the desert wind. Asterisk as the warriors prepared to escort her home, Naya looked back at me, eyes shining with something fierce and new. Not fear, not pain. Something else. Something that told me this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of a story neither of us expected, but both of us were now part of. And as the Apache rode off with her, the chief giving me one last nod of respect, I knew one thing for certain. Asterisk, saving her had changed my life. But losing her now would change my soul.